understanding who the customer is, I think, is the opportunity that's right in front of us with this technology, creating that, what we've talked about for many years in customer experience, that 360-degree view of the customer. I think that's a really big one. Agent Assist or Agent Copilot support tools for agents essentially is another really big one I would hit on.
VOX Wins. We turned out the lights, said AI 3 times into the mirror, and today we're lucky to be joined by Mark McKercher, VP of Global Support at Sovos, formerly Google, Amazon, and Roku, current president of the West Coast chapter of the Contact Center AI Association. Maybe this should have been the work-life balance episode, and also a strategic advisor of VOX Wins. Today, we're helping enterprise retail think about the myriad ways AI can optimize service operations, as well as how to leverage AI data for actionable decision-making. Well, I catch my breath from reading your CV, Mark. Could you tell us all the watch-outs when implementing an AI solution?
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be with you, Richard. I appreciate the time. You know, as I've thought a lot about AI in the last year and how you actually take this really interesting and life-changing technology as it relates to automation, I think, and really self-service, which in my experience is really kind of the holy grail of customer care, customer experience. A couple of the key things I think about are data privacy concerns. When it comes to some of the pilots that I've either proposed or launched in the last couple of years, those always have really driven a lot of the initial conversations at organizations, thinking about how do we ensure that our customers' information does not get consumed by one of these large language models. And then also data privacy as it relates to intellectual property. Both of those are really big areas of conversation, I think. The company I work for now, when we think about AI, I mean, that is really kind of the baseline. No model that we're going to engage with outside of something we would do internally can be utilizing any of our intellectual property or our customer data to train. Those are a couple of big things. You know, other things I think is I just noticed it the other day, customer apprehension as it relates to AI, right? A lot of companies are kind of leading with this, thinking that it's just kind of like standard and normal. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's a little bit naive to think everyone across the country and really the world has adopted and just kind of jumped into this. Those of us that sit in the tech world, right, it can be very much like, oh yeah, everybody gets this. This is like the new thing. But I think customer apprehension is one of them. And then kind of the final one I would hit on here is accuracy, right? What's going to happen when the model gets asked a question and just literally has no idea? Is it going to hallucinate, is the term I think they use today, or is it just going to return something inaccurate? There's a whole variety of ways that could go. So I think those are kind of the top ones that come to mind right now.
And that's a pretty nice spread between the customer may not be ready for it. Data privacy could be a concern. And then if the product, there are ways in that execution go wrong. That's pretty diverse and spread throughout, which makes me think great that we can keep a watch out and be on top of all of this. On the flip side, I think is that could be a little intimidating. So maybe it'd be helpful to paint a picture of what success could look like, and we'll play the optimist. Where can leaders start to make headway with this type of technology?
Yeah, I think personalization is a really big one. A lot of businesses, and one of the key struggles I have today in the role I'm in is understanding who is the customer, right? Because we can have customers come in through support. We can have customers come in directly through their account manager, maybe a customer success manager. Like there's 5 or 6 different ways that the customer might be able to enter, even finance, right? That's actually a pretty common area. Billing questions that actually go directly to our finance team and not the support team. Understanding who the customer is, I think, is the opportunity that's right in front of us with this technology, creating that what we've talked about for many years in customer experience, that 360-degree view of the customer. I think that's a really big one. Agent Assist or Agent Copilot support tools for agents essentially is another really big one I would hit on. As I got to understand what this technology could do at a high level, and then got more specific over time with use cases, it got really clear for me that the least risky way to go about this was to kind of gate or fence where the technology could actually be extrapolated, so that maybe perhaps it's just contained to an agent FAQ site that's not something that's customer facing, so that we can really try and understand where are the failure points, I think. And then I think the other one that's really common and something we're discussing in my current role with my team today is how do we create really useful, intelligent chatbots? The opposite, I think, of what people were rolling out 10 or 12 or 15 years ago. That's just being incredibly clear about what the chatbot can accomplish and what it cannot, and very quickly making it two things. One, making it very easy for the customer to opt out if they don't want to go through that experience. That's one. And then the other, just making it simple to actually, when the bot can't answer a question, to get it to a human quickly as well. So both of those paths. So I think those are kind of the key ones that I think about today. And the ones that I've heard the most success with is some of these agent co-pilots where you're actually letting the technology work for our agents so that it can summarize customer information. It can very quickly pull together a lot of the attributes that might be in the past needed to search for, like a knowledge article, like a refund status, and like those types of things. It can very quickly pull those things in. So the agent can actually engage with the customer. And it's more about understanding where the customer's at. Really, truly what we've talked about for many years, showing empathy, right? Just being empathetic about what's going on with their experience. It's hard in my experience in understanding how much agents have on them in a given day and a given shift to do that effectively when you're trying to search for 4 or 5 or 6 different things at one time, maybe on multiple screens. So I think this technology really brings this amazing opportunity for us to simplify the agent experience so they can focus on the customer.
So yeah, I think there's something to be said about letting the machine automate the machine work and then letting human beings be human in their work. And going back when you talked about policies of lease access for the FAQ use case and being able to manage that internally before we feel the comfort of getting agents and automation in front of customers, that does make me think about, we're going to be increasing the use cases of this technology, and that implies an increase in cybersecurity needs. Now, I'm guessing that there are better ways to manage that risk than bringing in a security vendor for the headache of 12 months of integration. What are some tips or ways that you think about staying compliant with this technology?
Yeah, that's such an important piece of the whole thing, right? For me in my current role, a couple of the most recent things I could speak to are, one, I've gotten to know our CIO pretty well. That was one of my first goals in joining my company last summer, was get to know him. We actually had an opportunity to travel together, so I even had a quicker way to do that. Understand what his whole perspective on the technology is. Also get to know our CTO and just understand really at the highest level from the technology perspective, how are these folks in my company thinking about it? And I'm very fortunate and also at the time, interestingly enough, our CIO was finalizing a process where we had kind of an internal AI policy, right? So got to know the policy, got to know some folks in legal that would be looking at the types of vendors that we're bringing to the table. And I've gotten to know, frankly, for those that are just getting started, it's a little different, but I've had some experience. So I've gotten to understand at a couple of different tech companies, the whole mindset around buy versus build. So I think having some baseline around that, like how your company thinks about those things, are really, really powerful. And then fundamentally, any vendor I'm talking to, that's kind of one of the first parts of the conversation is, how do you make sure that my data is secure? Like how does that actually work in simple terms, right? Doing compliance reviews of vendors, looking at the experience, the customers, of course, vendors that might have, looking at some of the use cases that they've run, talk to some of the customers that vendors have is another one. But for me, first and foremost, it's really understanding the leadership that oversees technology at my company and how they think about solving for some of these problems. And I've been fortunate enough, we've got a pretty very, very black and white AI policy, where I know at a lot of bigger companies it's more difficult. And then if you were to really I have some friends that work at Meta and Google. If you're at one of those companies, you're essentially going to have to utilize the models that they build, right? So I think there's a lot of different ways, but compliance is a really big deal. And I think leaders need to be very thoughtful about it. And for me, internally, I've learned that's aligning with legal and aligning with the CIO and the CTO.
Powerful friends in powerful places, even if it's just on the other side of the table from you. I can't even predict what our world will look like 6 weeks from now, so I won't ask you to predict the future, Mark. But where do you think there might be opportunities for this technology or just the use cases and the application of it to grow up a little bit?
I think it's really going to be really in, how do you take this technology and deploy it in a way that really kind of, one, stays within kind of the bounds of the mission of the business, plus and kind of the way the company operates, and not, because what I have seen thus far, or what I would caution against, is just sort of like taking it, right out of the box and just deploying it without thinking through how you go to market, how your customers experience your product today, right? Some of those key pieces. I think also it's really about the proof is in the pudding, right? Like today, one of the biggest challenges I think is, I think I'm going to go to a webinar in a couple of weeks where I'm just trying to get to as many of these sessions where people are talking about what they've actually done, not what they're proposing, not what the best proof of concept is, but what's actually been done. And then, I think it's just bite size. You just use small, like, I think proof of concepts make a lot of sense, but you get really clear about what you're trying to accomplish, create success criteria, create the metrics that you need, and making sure that you can do that. A couple other really key areas that I think where we can utilize the technology to kind of grow up, as you called it, are for, again, speed to efficiency with our agents, with our people in the seats doing the customer inquiries and handling those. We can do that via upskilling, via talent management. There's a whole variety of ways that we can deploy this technology to kind of kick the tires, so to speak. So I think there's that, and then back to the prior question we were talking about, just getting a chatbot off the ground. I think those are key ways to do it.
Like you're talking about, again, I think there is a thread of, I guess, conservative adoption with every leader that comes on the show and talks a little bit about this technology. Yes, it's going to be the younger startups that are in abundance talking about adopting this and, oh, this is a great idea. But this is software. You're going to turn it on, it's going to break, you're going to run into a lot of issues. And I think we need to see who has dealt with those and responded to those more quickly. Talking from someone who used to work for a very small AI company, shout out Snaps. Mark, I know how chaotic your world has been, so we won't make this a truly hot seat, but let's get into some hot takes. Do you have a bold prediction about the future of service that might surprise your peers?
My bold prediction actually is that this technology, AI in general, will bring kind of the value, and I not really just the value, but really the perceived internal value of support and customer experience to a different level. And what I mean by that is I think deploying the as it's understood today, the large language models and what they can do brings this new kind of element where support will be coming to the table, not with just kind of a lot of kind of innuendos and thoughts and just kind of experiences about customers, but utilizing large language models, we can actually, I'm working on a project right now related to one of the countries we operate in. We're pulling every ticket that we've worked on in 5 years and doing a summarization and using these models to tell us what our customers are saying, right? What they're saying about the product, what their experience really is with the support organization, not based on a survey they filled out a few days or weeks afterwards, but like literally based on what they're saying in the chats and emails and the back and forth conversations. I really think my bold prediction is kind of in the next 2 or 3 years, support is going to have a kind of a new, just this new value prop coming to the table within an organization. And it's all based upon the data. It's all based upon being able to extrapolate and provide really good insights into what our customers are saying, not only about their experience with the support team, but that with the product, that with the sales organization, that with all the other parts of the organization.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I mean, out of all the hats I wear at Vox, I think head of research is probably the one that sits most comfortably on my head. And I always worry about biases in self-report methods. I think I've looked at CSAT scores, NPS, and wondered, are you really capturing the entire experience or just maybe the more motivated, upset customers in a moment? So being able to just take the raw data from those interactions is something I haven't heard of, but that's actually really, really exciting. Okay. All right. Good answer to that. Otherwise, I think every episode so far has touched on AI and it's dominating our lives. It probably should. But we also ask every guest about an underrated factor that their peers shouldn't overlook. What's yours?
I think about that kind of in a couple of ways. One, even though if you are embracing and utilizing AI to simplify your organization, simplify how you do what you do, simplify how customers engage with you, I think it's just remembering that there's going to be a segment of customers that struggle to do that, right? And that you get like, let's not forget them. Also, I just think it's kind of maybe two parts. I think I've shared this and talked to people about this a lot over the last couple of years, but it's also really understanding the people that are in the support and experience and success roles. How important it is, I think, to bring them along kind of on this journey of what does this really look like? Because there's so much, I think, reasonable fear out there that, hey, if I have a transactional type role where I'm doing refunds or I'm processing returns, why will my job even be needed? I think that the narrative is actually quite different from that. I'm a big believer in this technology isn't necessarily going to take away jobs, but the people that utilize it and harness it the best are probably going to be the ones that succeed. So I think it's bringing organizations and team members along to understand this technology isn't about replacing you, but it's about how do we connect you with the technology to kind of create this, like I mentioned earlier, to create this amazing opportunity to let humans be humans and let the technology and AI do what it does well.
I would agree. No, and from someone who, at least in an HR capacity, worked with that technology with support teams. So I think the value prop is clear. You have a great team, empower them, and allow them to handle your customers' most difficult challenges, and save the Wismo stuff for stuff that can be automated.
Yeah.
Now, Mark, we've also started asking guests about the issue at the heart of Vox, leader preferences for how and when they work with vendors. So what qualities do you look for in vendor partnerships, and how should vendors support leaders like you in navigating a changing industry?
In all vendor partnerships, kind of, I look for people that I can connect with, like anything in life, right? Like I look for people that are trying to solve a problem and they seem to have a good perspective on how they're going to do that, right? So in customer experience in AI right now, I don't know if I've ever seen a time in my career, probably not. I don't think it's possible that this many companies this fast have gotten funding and started launching a product. So I think I talked to a couple of leaders in the industry a couple of weeks ago, and one of them had just started a new role as a chief customer officer, and he reached out. He said, "Hey, I know you've been looking at some of this stuff. I'm just completely overwhelmed. Like, where do we even start?" Right? And I'm lucky I had some time earlier this year where I did do some consulting and focus on this technology almost exclusively. It's about people that have a problem statement and they've got a clear understanding of why they're going to try and solve, or how they're going to solve it. Excuse me. I think it's people that come to the table and are really direct about kind of what you're going to get from the product that they're trying to sell. And the more challenging part, frankly, Richard, in the last 18 months is getting a clear answer on how do they price this, right? How does this even work? Because I think a lot of us that have been around for 20 years or more, right? You remember, just based on how many agents you had, you paid a licensing fee, and that's not how this technology is really working. It's much more along the lines of usage, right? Like you would think of with AWS or any of the other cloud services. So being very transparent about how the pricing works, and being open, frankly, to being a bit flexible to allow some testing of products is, I think, really important as well.
So let's be careful what we wish for. Hopefully, for anyone listening to this, we've moved from getting over fears, understanding the watchouts, being prepared for that. You've implemented this technology. You've passed all your compliance reviews. Now, what do you do with what you have? These systems have all the bells and whistles. Now we actually have to show value, especially to all those stakeholders that we got bought in from. What do you think are the biggest data needs for e-com leaders today? And are there any promises of the data that AI can provide that should be demystified?
Yeah, well, as kind of back to the prior question for a second, as I've kind of gotten into talking to some of these companies that are using AI to help customer experience and e-com leaders, the thing that really resonated with me the most is when I find leaders, and a couple of the CEOs I've talked to said, "Hey, look, this technology is almost endless what you can accomplish with it." But the problem is a lot of businesses, especially in the support and customer experience realm, have never truly invested in their data. And so when they try and deploy something like this, garbage in equals garbage out, right? Like, so if you don't have kind of clean data at the baseline, how are you actually going to create value? So one of the ways I'm attacking that right now is, as I mentioned earlier, utilizing this technology to do enormous amounts of voice of the customer insights, like out of the gate, almost as a starting point before even launching it, right? Just saying, hey, look at all this amazing information we just learned about not only how our customers are experiencing our products, but how they're perceiving different parts of the organization so that we can make adjustments, right? How we're able to like talk to the customer and give them direction and thoughts about product recommendations is a really big one that can be utilized pretty quickly. And finally, I would just say first party personalization, I think is also one. We kind of talked a little bit about personalization earlier, but I think that's one I would call out here as well.
I think talk to some people who have new allies and don't feel as siloed from their marketing team because they be able to take this data and really feed back to them and think in a way that different cross-functional teams can find new workflows with this data. I'm imagining that the true large enterprise are going to have dedicated engineering teams that can handle the maintenance as you're moving along. But I'm imagining that middle market leaders will find it helpful to know what are some of the standard challenges that come with working with really large data sets.
That really comes down to data integration issues, right? Data cleaning, NLP training, and then ultimately, I think one of the things that I've experienced right now, just recently in the last couple of weeks, is we've been thinking about how to launch some proof of concepts related to automation and self-service. It's just really how suboptimal, frankly, our Salesforce instance is. We've got a lot of kind of tech debt that's built up over a number of years, not out of malice, but frankly, just because of like lack of focus and lack of funding to look at, hey, how is our and human nature is to kind of take the least, the path of least resistance, right? So we found that our agents actually have some really bad habits that they've created to work around problems that we've created systemically. So again, it's just, there's this tech debt problem that everyone faces everywhere, right? Across all companies and all kinds of everything. It's tech debt's like a constant problem. But I think as it relates to launching this technology, it's a big one when it comes to the data challenges that you mentioned.
And I think just to connect some dots, it gets into trash in, trash out. Yeah, it's going to help you catch up, learn a lot more things, but you're going to learn a lot more about how you compare to maybe the other customers they have if you're finding the adoption of this technology maybe a little bit more difficult or running into bugs. So maybe not terrible learning experience just to get that diagnostic value right out the gate for some of these mid-market companies. We've already talked about the types of use cases that can benefit with this enhancement, but let's shine a light on some of the more immediate unlocks that this technology brings. Where should leaders be looking to get their first wins when they go live?
Lowering customer effort. So if you're not measuring customer effort, I highly recommend you do. I think if you go look at the data over the last kind of 5 to 10 years, there's a lot out there that suggests measuring customer effort and lowering it drives loyalty even more so than those big, exciting kind of Zappos type stories for businesses. But I think lowering effort, therefore driving loyalty and top line revenue is a big one that you can quickly assess if you're measuring customer effort. Handle time, I think, is another one. Just on some of the comments we talked about earlier, in reducing the need for kind of searching, pecking around, looking for the information, providing that information by connecting your knowledge base to a large language model. So as an agent's hearing a question, they're typing it into a chat box, and it's prompting various very specific answers, not 2 or 3 random articles, if you will. I think that the last one I would call out is a big focus for our business right now is understanding why customers churn. And I think as I mentioned earlier, if we're looking at our cases every day, all of them, every piece of them, being able to extrapolate that out by customer, I think we get a lot more early signals about churn. And so I see that as an opportunity right out of the gate.
Okay, great. No, but that's actually really insightful. If this goes live and you're just looking at the end of the pipeline for your revenue numbers to change, there's a lot that you're going to miss about how your customer is now engaging with your brand. And those are the big learnings that can set you up down the road. Changing and pivoting and really zooming out, I always like to wrap up by shining a light on some of the big wins of our guests. Those war stories where you put out a fire, build something uncommonly difficult. Plus, hey, if I ask you this, then it's not shameless self-promotion. I know especially you and your team deserve a pat on the back for the last couple of months that you've been through.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really most excited by the last kind of 2 or 3 months. Well, actually, maybe you guess 4 or 5 months now, but bringing together a group of people, disparate people that have kind of been in my team. I'm building a global support organization at a business where it's generally been run regionally. Being able to bring together people from all different parts of the world, different cultures, different experiences, trying to solve a common problem has been really fun. And it's been one of the big wins we actually had was an offsite last month in person here in the US, brought people from Europe and South America over to meet with leaders here in the US. And it was just so powerful. Again, I don't know, maybe it's also just this notion of remote work and being able to get people together in an office and like really get at a whiteboard. That was really fun. And we lined out 3 or 4 different, very specific use cases we can use AI technology for. Now, going back to the comment a few minutes ago, what we're working on very aggressively is cleaning up our data sets so that we can actually launch a proof of concept and show the business some value out of this technology. So I think just bringing people together to coalesce and get excited around a common vision has been a big win. And then also in less than 90 days, we launched a new relationship with a very large partner doing a variety of technology kind of scaling work for us, but also some optimization work with resources in different parts of the world. So we've launched a very large project internally that's all meant to digitally transform our business so that we better understand our customers, provide a better experience, and ultimately drive more revenue. So all of that has happened in the last 90 days, and it's been really, really amazing. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, you think about at the size of the company that Sovos is. I mean, to hear you talk about really big overhauls, and then remember that it's projects this big squeeze into the time frame you have. It's amazing you are still standing on 2 legs, and another reason why very appreciative that you're here with us. Lastly, are there any senior managers watching that you want to give some advice to? Our thinking is this is going to be the next cohort of leaders.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think about that a good bit, right? Because I'm at the point in my career now where I'm trying to do and be a mentor and supporter of those that are just coming into the leadership ranks. And as so many did for me, right? 10 or 15 years ago, I've got an example, 5, 10 different people I could talk about. Advice that I would provide is always be curious, right? As a first and foremost, right? Stay curious, be teachable. At this point, especially senior managers coming into the customer experience space, be incredibly nimble, be flexible, be willing to adapt and kind of change the way you think about things, because we're in a time of the AI and how it can come to bear within the customer experience spaces. I mean, there's so many different leaders I could point to in the last 6 months that have said the most area for AI is customer support, customer experience, right? So I think all those qualities, being interested in what's available, what's out there, being teachable and being curious and ultimately being flexible about how you think so you can pivot quickly are going to be really key traits to success going into the future.
And hey, I'll also I'll put a Venison eye on that list of people who have benefited from that mentorship and that leadership since you've been with us from the beginning.
Yeah, it's been a blast. Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. Yeah. That's all the time we have. To our audience at home, or you're on the train watching us on your cell phone, wherever you are, thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week as we uncover more of the evolving retail landscape and understand the consensus voice of its leaders, because above all else, VOX wins.